All right, also known as Sporty Spice. Thank you for the intro. The only difference is that we don't claim to have cracked the code. We have cracked the code. So I don't know if that's like a polite British witticism, but I'm a brash American, so we did it and we won. So nice to see you guys. The best part is that I, as an older gentleman, get to stand up here and talk to you about young people. And I have no claim other than that there's 100 of them who work for me, and I do a decent job of listening to them. So what I wanted to talk about was first kind of trends in sports in general, and this is more on sports participation, then television, and then us. But my general thesis is I'm a little more bearish on people paying for sports and for OTT and for all the things that everyone's been talking about for the last 2 days, so sorry. So most of my stats tend to be based in the United States because that's where I am and I have better information. But from some research, I do know they are more global in nature. At least in the US, the average kid plays sports for less than 3 years. They tend to quit by age 11. And there's any number of factors of that. I think you see globally there is a wealth disparity in sports, and those who can afford to participate at a higher level and a more competitive level do with private coaches and other things like that. There's also more alternatives than there have ever been to playing sports. There's also pressure on young people from their families to do things that could be financially rewarding in the future, to get into college, to do other things like that. And as I like to say, one of the reasons people are always like, wow, I can't believe kids love watching video games and people play video games and esports. And I challenge any of you to go into the den and watch a kid play a video game. And I'm pretty sure that you won't see a parent right behind them screaming at them, get that headshot, get that headshot. What did you do wrong there? And that's one of the reasons that kids like video games versus sports. In addition to playing, obviously going to live sports events is very, very expensive. Way more expensive than when I was a kid. This is an NFL game. But even to go to a basketball game, to a lot of these types of games, you think about a family that makes $50,000 a year spending $500 for food and tickets. It's 1% of your pre-tax income for a 3-hour session. That's tough. And when people don't get to participate, don't get to experience how fun live sports is and the crowd and everything else like that, it tends to make them less interested in it over the long run. In addition, I would say that one of the things that we've seen and that we've benefited from is this idea that your loyalty to your city or to your single team, which I have. I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm a diehard Philadelphia fan. My kids don't care at all and make fun of me for that. But you see 42% of kids in the UK support a second team. And for me, if anybody in my neighborhood supported a second team, we would beat them up. So it's a really different type of thing. And in addition, they're willing to switch teams because they follow athletes. And following athletes is so big, and you see all of these stories. Ronaldo leaves one team and it loses 1 million followers the same day that he leaves, and the next team gains 4 million followers. You see LeBron James move to the LA Lakers, and NBA ratings will dip as much as 25% because it's on 3 hours later on the East Coast. And you see this real kind of athlete empowerment, which has been built by, I think, the times, the generation, social platforms, and it's really changed the nature of it. And we cover, for example, a tremendous amount of kind of high school sports or early college sports, and a lot of these don't have rights. And people say, what happens if they come in and have rights? Well, if I find some kid who's really good, a Zion Williamson, who we covered a lot, who was the #1 pick in the NBA draft, I'm not going to go do a 3-year deal with his high school because the second he's gone, nobody wants to watch that anymore. It's all about the individuals, and as the individuals move around, they really transform the sports landscape. If you can see this chart, this is a percentage of age group who are what they call avid fans. So when you have people who have unlimited entertainment options and they're more and more disconnected from sport, the idea of their avidness, their kind of hardcoreness as a fan goes down. So the red line is age 12 to 17, and over the last 10 years, it's gone from almost 50% to 33%. And right next to that is the black line, which is at 26%. That's 18 to 34. So you're saying that literally only a quarter to a third of the population of this next generation is an avid, hardcore sports fan. And given not only entertainment options, but social platforms where they can participate and talk to other people about their favorite TV shows, where they can follow musicians, where they can do other things like that, it's really changing the landscape. I would say also that this generation tends to be very socially conscious, and in fact, the class that I teach at New York University is called Social Entrepreneurship. They support causes. You know, obviously this kid at a NBA game held a T-shirt and then switched it around, and it had another message on it. You see all kinds of unfortunate racism around global football. And in a lot of places like that. I assign a lot of stuff in my class. The stuff that I assign about Colin Kaepernick is always the most popular stuff in my class. And you look at Nike, which took a risk and is also a supporter of the National Football League, and their support of him, and you look at the chart on the right, and that's them in the green, and that's them on the popularity in the green, and it only increased their popularity with young people. And different leagues struggle and do different jobs well. You can see where some empower their athletes to speak out, and some try to silence their athletes, and likewise. But for young people, they really do care about causes, and even causes that food insecurity, food waste, social causes, identity causes. And this is a really different trend, and sports is not immune to that trend. I would say for me, one of the biggest things that I think I learned in trying to serve this generation and starting this company was really this idea of what sports is. You know, I'm an old school guy. For me, it's whistle to whistle, and as soon as the game is over, I am done. But if you look at kind of the history of the stuff that we have published, and this is this kid, Mac McClung there, this is a dunk that he made, you know, in a gym without his shirt by himself, you know, and that's a tough dunk to make. That did way more views for us than NBA clips that we have posted. And so this idea that sports is so broad, it could be me, you know, nutmegging somebody in the center of Madrid. It could be him doing this or anything else like that. And I'm like, who is that person, and where's their story, and who is their character? And that's been a huge boon for us because we don't pay for rights, nor have we needed to, because the whole globe is filled with sports in a way. And if you can frame it in a certain way, it's a huge opportunity. I compare that to, this is the NFL, 1950, 2019, pretty much looks the same. I like to say that if you froze, you know, a friend of mine from 1979 and brought them back to life in 2019, and you showed them Snapchat or Fortnite, they would have no idea what they were looking at. If you showed them this broadcast, they'd be like, oh, that's an NFL game. How's Ron Jaworski going to do today? And he's a very long ago retired quarterback. So really there hasn't been a lot of transition here. And by the way, I'm not a huge believer in this, like we're going to throw a bunch of emojis on here and a bunch of stats and it's going to change sports viewing for young people. I think all of those ideas, and I sit in here and hear some of those ideas, they're very top-down ideas. They're never ideas that were like somebody went out and talked to 100 young people and said, what do you want? They were like, oh, young people love emojis, so let's put some on a broadcast and boom, we're done. And let's take their heart rate and show that on the broadcast too. And I look at that and I think, who asked for this? Answer, no one. In addition, you look at social platforms, and these are, you know, from Instagram and from YouTube, and a lot of what traditional broadcasters do is they recut their content from television and they put it on traditional platforms. Now, of course, the majority of YouTube is watched on mobile phones. Your ability to see this or this on your phone is very limited. We program exclusively for mobile phones. I center the people. I don't have them talking to the side with microphones. I focus on faces because digital is about people and faces. The rise of vertical video has as much to do with that we tend to be more vertical as humans as anything else. And that's not necessarily a successful strategy. So that's kind of like my position on sports and young people and where they are. 5% of live TV viewers in the United States are 13 to 24. The average age of the television viewer is 56 years old. So all those people who love live sports and are going to open up their wallet and subscribe to you, 19 out of 20 of them currently aren't watching any live television. And your main subscriber is 56, so a little older than me, but if they're vegetarian and they exercise once a day, they'll live for a while and they'll be able to keep paying you, which will be good. In addition, obviously people like free media. There's actually more YouTube watch, not just than television, but than Netflix as well. I think a lot of people take this mind that somehow that's going to change or we're going to professionalize it or anything else like that. Of the 2 billion people who are watching all of that YouTube, very few of them are dissatisfied. Very few of them think, wow, I don't find anything I like here. I just wish it was more professionalized. They're very engaged. And again, a lot of what drives YouTube, in addition to sports highlights, are individuals and stories about individuals and the opportunity to participate in people's lives. And what I like to say, you know, I worked at WME Endeavor, and I got to sit on the floor with the television guys for 3 years. And television and sport is very driven by format. You know, you have instructional cooking shows, and then all of a sudden the format changes and you have competitive shows. What's amazing about YouTube is the format is a democracy. I can come out and I can make videos about diving in a river and looking for people's dropped iPhones, and millions of people can watch that, and that can become a format. And so again, a lot of what you hear me say is that everything that traditional media that we're trying to do is this very top-down. We have this precious thing. We think we know what the audience wants, and we're going to give it to them in a specific way. And a lot of what powers consumption and what powers us, and even YouTube, is the audience deciding that they're open to any number of formats, and they like to have control. If you follow Fortnite, when they went from season 1 to season 2, they went down for a while. 6 million concurrent viewers watched a black hole. Literally, it looked like this with nothing else on it for 2 hours, waiting for it to change, whereas 2 million viewers were watching NBA on ESPN. We had a show, a 20-minute show. It was on Snapchat and YouTube 2 weekends ago. It was about these 2 kids in Orlando, Florida, who are too short to really play basketball, but their dad, who is a hilarious character, rides them to play basketball. The average watch time on that show is about 20 minutes, and we had 10 million people watch that over the course of a weekend. So bigger than almost any other sports except for some premium NFL games in the United States. Even when they're at the game, you know, this slide says this is the World Series. This kid's playing a game on his phone. Astros hat, $25. Jersey, $125. Front row World Series ticket, $5,000. Getting to the next level in a video game, priceless. This guy's at a game and he's watching his phone. So again, not only is it expensive to go, but people are choosing other types of mediums. So now that I just took a giant shit on television and the future of sports, I'll tell you why I'm the only hope left, which I don't really believe. But I wanted to say something clever there. So this is more about us and how we've been able to take advantage of that and benefit. And again, for overtime, I left Endeavor 3 years ago with the idea to build a global sports network. And it wasn't that complicated. I said, if you were Sky or you were ESPN and you were going to start a brand new sports network today from scratch, what would you do? There's 2 paths in the world. One path is be a billionaire and go out and spend a lot of money on rights and put it behind a paywall. And the other, I think, is what we did, which is build a really, really big community, listen to our audience, and go from the ground up. This is an event that we did It was called the Takeover. It was sponsored by Converse. We got all the best up-and-coming basketball players in the United States, most of whom will be in the NBA. We rented a warehouse in Brooklyn. We put down our own court, but we did not live stream it. Instead, we filmed it with cinematic red cameras as if it was an action movie. We released it as a 30-minute movie and as a bunch of other formats, and we had 100 million views of this game across social in the 7 days following that. And it was a really different perspective. For us, we have really focused on younger athletes. They can be professional athletes. They can be, right up to being professional athletes. But I think for our audience, and it's one of the reasons YouTube creators are so successful, is that, number one, the audience wants to own the characters they want to own, the same way that we all wanted to listen to music that was different than music that our parents listened to. Second of all, they want to see these characters. They want to get behind the scenes with them. We're able to work with younger athletes in part without kind of agents and other people in there, and we're able to build a platform for them to tell their own stories. One of the most important things that we've done from the beginning is that we actually tag all the athletes that we cover, meaning that if we put a post of you on Instagram, we will put your Instagram handle there. If we put a post of LeBron James on Instagram, we will put his Instagram handle there. Nobody else in sports does this. And the result is that athletes who appear on our channels will gain tens of thousands of followers. My friend was in California. A large man came up to him. He was wearing an Overtime shirt. He said, "Do you work for Overtime?" He hesitated for a second, and he said, "Yes." "Why?" And the guy said, "I'm a former football player. My son's a football player. He was on Overtime yesterday. He gained 50,000 followers, and now he has 3 offers for college." And so when you think about following as a currency, as a real currency, as something that every athlete gains and takes with them through the rest of life that they can build and they can monetize, that's really valuable. Even when I worked at an Endeavor and I tried to sign certain professional athletes, they would say, well, their following isn't big enough or not. The kid who dunked without the shirt earlier, we covered him for a year. We took him from 15,000 to 750,000 followers on Instagram. Even if he doesn't make the NBA, he has a giant platform for himself. And now every kid knows that, and they know that we're kind of participating and supporting them in that way. These are CrowdTangle and Tubular are ways that you measure social. If you look at that, we have the #1 engagement in sports by far bigger than anyone else, almost 4 times larger than ESPN. That's on Instagram. This is on YouTube. We also have the biggest engagement in sports, bigger than House of Highlights, bigger than anyone else. Engagement means percentage of people who watch your video who like it, who comment on it, or who share it. Because the reality is that the insight to create a brand new sports network was not, let's take a bunch of stuff and put it on the screen and just have people watch it. It was like, let's build a community. Let's have people interact with our content. Let's have them participate with the content. I have full-time people who are community managers. I worked at a gaming business before. I ran a gaming business company for 5 years. We had millions of people who played games online, and we had community managers to support our audience. We also do that. We have community managers. I have full-time people who do nothing but respond to thousands of comments and direct messages. I feature kids. Kids find my personal Instagram, which is incredibly boring unless you are my wife, my kids, or my dogs. And they send me messages. Hey, can you put this on Instagram? Hey, on Overtime. Hey, I just want to let you know next year I'm going to be on Overtime. So many people find my account and message me to be part of what we do that I actually have to have a separate account called Overtime CEO where they can find me and message me. I'm pretty sure that very few people reach out to the CEO of Sky Sports on Instagram and DM him and say, hey, my guy, could you put this on Sky Sports tomorrow? I want to show you this video because I think it captures what we've really tried to do. I keep using the word community because I think it's really valuable in broadcasting. I don't think that you can just go out and get love and money and respect and engagement from people. if you don't reach out to them. And we really set out to build a brand. We have a hand sign, an O. People say shout out to Overtime. We've been to thousands of events, and we built this from the ground up. And I think when you see this, hopefully you'll understand why we've tried to build something that's really different.
Overtime! Overtime!
Shout out Overtime, boy.
Good morning.
Shout out to Overtime.
The rest of my life gon' start today. Calling up the ocean, this is evolution. Can I go into another era on the next level? I'm spreading wings and I just wanna sing.
Shout out to Overtime. Good vibes.
In the future, now the best can't call me. Forget about yesterday, Paul McCartney. I'm feeling like a Beatle on stage, and the whole wide world's gonna know my name. Baby, it's a brand new day. Something doesn't feel the same.
Shout out to Overtime. It's lit.
Good morning.
Overtime Takeover is the best event I've ever been to.
Good morning.
I love Overtime.
The rest of my life gon' start today.
So that's my presentation. Thank you. And I think, as you'll see, I have a lot of reasons to believe that they're not going to pay for any OTT, but I also have a lot of reasons to believe that there are a lot of other business opportunities around sports, and they involve community and grassroots listening to the voice of young people from the ground up.